Hey everybody, it's the Bald Man once again, and today we're going to be talking about the multipliers, fiscal policy, and how we use the multipliers and fiscal policy to fix a bad economy. So first, let's start with the average propensity to consume and save. When we talk about the average propensity to consume and save, guys, we are just referring to what we do with our regular paycheck. Of course, pay bills, buy groceries, stuff like that, right? This is what we call the average propensity to consume and save. And as you can see here, APC plus APS has to equal to 1. Why? There's only two things we can do with money: spend it or save it. Now, we're mainly going to worry about the marginal propensity to consume and save in this class. And that's the information we need for our spending and tax multipliers. So we're going to spend more time talking about that than we did about the APC plus APS. So here you can see that the marginal propensity to consume and the marginal propensity to save are 1. Why? Again, there's only two things you can do with money: spend or save. So what's the difference between the APC and APS and the MPC and MPS, right? So I mentioned that the APC and APS refer to your regular paycheck. The MPC and MPS, well, this is marginal money. And if you remember what I told you in macro, marginal means additional. So the MPC plus MPS, this refers to what we do with additional monies. Do we get like a Christmas bonus? Did we inherit some money? The government is really interested in what we're going to do with this money because, of course, this is additional money. And they want to see, are we going to inject this back into the economy, or are we going to sell it, right? So again, this marginal propensity to consume and save are the ones we're going to be mainly worried about in this class, especially this section right here. All right, so here we have our formula for the spending multiplier, which is 1 over MPS, and the tax multiplier, which is negative MPC over MPS. But remember what I told you guys, we don't really care that it's negative, just assume it's positive. Why? Because we're not going to use that negative number anyway. Right? Again, spending multiplier 1 over MPS. The tax multiplier is negative MPC over MPS. All right, so let's look at these and how we come up with the spending and the tax multiplier. All right, so if they tell us the MPC is equal to 0.9, well, that means my point S has to be 0.1. Why? Well, MPC plus MPS has to equal to 1. 0.9 plus what gives me 1? 0.1, right? So it's going to be 1 over 0.1. We don't like decimals inside fractions. This is actually 1 over 1/10, which means my spending multiplier is going to be 10. If they tell me my MPC is 0.8, that means my MPS is going to be 0.2. Again, we don't like decimals inside fractions. That's 1 over 1/5, which means my multiplier is going to be 5. If MPC is 0.75, that means my marginal propensity to save is going to be 0.25. And that is actually 1 over 1/4, which means my multiplier is going to be 4. And if it's MPC is a half, that means my MPS has to be a half also. All right, 1 over 0.5, which means what? That this is actually going to be 1 over 1/2, right? Sorry about that. Let me fix that. It's going to be 1 over 1/2, which means my spending multiplier is going to be 2. Now let's work with the tax multiplier. This is going to be negative 0.9 over 0.1, which means my multiplier is going to be 9. This is going to be, I'm going to just leave out the negative for now, right? So it's going to be 0.8 over 0.2, which means my multiplier here is going to be 4. 0.75 over 0.25 means my multiplier is going to be 3. And 0.5 over 0.5 means my multiplier is going to be 1. Now, I mentioned this in class, and I'll mention it here again. Here, guys, if we remember the spending multiplier formula, and we remember the spending multipliers, 2, 5, 4, and 2, And if we have a complete breakdown of our mental systems while we're taking a test or something, and they ask us about the tax multiplier, and we don't have any idea, just remember the spending multiplier. And the tax multiplier is going to be 1 less than the spending multiplier. All right, so what does this mean? It means that the spending multiplier is stronger than the tax multiplier. Right, we'll be able to get out of recessions and all that a lot easier if we spend our way out of it. Does that mean spending is always the right answer? No, but we should know that the spending multiplier is a lot faster working than the tax multiplier. So let's keep going here. All right, now we're going to talk about fiscal policy. And once again, fiscal policy basically are the two tools that government has to fix a bad economy. And as you can see here, the two tools that government has to fix a bad economy are spending and taxes. Now, there are two types of fiscal policy. We have expansionary fiscal policy and we have contractionary fiscal policy. All right, we would conduct expansionary fiscal policy if we're in a recession and we need to speed the economy back up, get people back to work, all those good things. Then we would conduct expansionary fiscal policy. And expansionary fiscal policy simply means we're going to increase our spending and or decrease our taxes as well. Now, if the economy is overextended and we need to slow things down, right, we need to pump the brakes, then we will conduct contractionary fiscal policy. And that means simply that we have to cut government spending and or raise taxes. By raising taxes, we take money out of people's pockets. They can't spend it, and the economy starts to slow down. All right, so let's take what we know about expansionary and contractionary fiscal policy and the multipliers and put them together to try to fix a bad economy. As you can see here, we have an economy that is in a recession. We're at an output of 100 billion. We need to be at 200 billion. So we have a recessionary gap of 100 billion right now. So again, we have a $100 billion gap. And then our marginal propensity to consume is 0.9. And they want to know how government needs to change spending to close the gap. All right, so if my MPC is 0.9, I need to find my spending multiplier, right? Because they're asking about spending. So my spending multiplier's formula is 1 over MPS, which means it has to be 1 over 0.1. Why 0.1? Plus 0.9 plus 0.1 will equal to 1. So I know that is correct. That is also what? 1 over 1/10, which means my multiplier is 10. I'm going to come here. I'm going to divide 100 by 10. That means that government needs to increase spending by $10 billion to close the gap. All right, so we need to make sure that we increase spending by $10 billion. Otherwise, if you just give me $10 billion, guys, it's going to be wrong because the answer is, the question is asking how should government change spending, not what government needs to spend, right? So we need to make sure we include increased spending by $10 billion. All right, so let's move on to the next example. Here we can see we have an economy that is overextended. Oh, by the way, let me go back here. Here we use expansionary fiscal policy, right? I spent $10 billion more, right? So that's expansionary fiscal policy. Now let's move on over here again. Okay, once again, we're overextended. We're at $260 billion of output, but we need to be at 200 billion. We have 60 billion too much. And if our MPC is 0.75, how should government change taxes to close the gap? Now, my tax multiplier formula here is MPC over MPS. If my MPC is 0.75, that means my MPS has to be 0.25. Why? Because it has to equal to 1. And 0.25 over 0.75 equals to 3. I'm going to take my tax multiplier. I'm going to divide 60 by 3, and my answer is going to be 20. That's part of the answer, though, right? That's not the complete answer. The complete answer is decrease taxes by $20 billion. And we will create the other $40 billion that's disappeared from the lack of economic activity after the government has taxed us $20 billion more. All right, guys, if you have any questions about anything I talked about today, feel free to drop a comment down below or send me a message on Remind, and I will get back to you.